And I want to welcome in my brother from Baltimore. And, the one that teaches me all these things that I'm trying to retain. Interesting segment there, Don, about the team up near Chicago looking for the lost boy with autism. What were you thinking about as that one rolled out?
Yeah, horrible story, especially with the outcome, but it shows the power of being able to mobilize and do good for your community. Uh, Again, I think stories like this, regardless of outcome, end up helping the ham community. It's just a shame that's how it ended.
Now, you do this for a living. I mean, you've got over 20 years of experience doing this. You don't always see the great positive results. Any advice for ham radio operators that want to help, that just get that call? I mentioned this on the show over the years. I remember my father was a CB guy. I was a young kid, probably 8 or 9 years old. There was a kid in Baltimore who went missing. And I remember us jumping in the van. This was very loosely organized. He had an Econoline van. It was black. It was beautiful. Just him, me, and the CB, and it stuck in me. And I think that's where it really started. But there was some communication going back and forth. There wasn't a lot of riffraff. But I remember this sort of coordination. And my father was not an MCOM guy. He was a sheet metal guy, did heating and air conditioning. But the call came out to get some help. And we took off. And sun was setting, and you picture the area around where the zoo is. And back then, when we were kids, a lot of people would climb up these rocks. Next thing you know, they fall in with the polar bears. This is not even funny. Don could probably back this up. We're laughing now because why would you do that? But that happened when we were kids. And the polar bears were like, come on in, the water's great. Anyway, not to make light of this situation, they found this. It was a young girl. But talk a little bit about, I know we had some things we want to talk about for sure, but it dovetails nicely into the everyday ham who wants to help and is like, I got to go help. What are some things to think about before you go and jump in your car and just help?
I think gear. And I want to go back to the conversation that you guys had before me when you were talking about being in the moment and realizing that it's not about you. I know a lot of hams do have clothing that highlights their call sign, maybe the club they're in, and that's great. And I think that's perfect to have if that's your thing. But the reality is if you're showing up on one of these scenes and there's some pomp and circumstance to your arrival, you're going about it the wrong way. So in my mind, I need to know what I need to have because we're a piece of the puzzle at that point. You mentioned search and rescue, another piece of the puzzle. So the jurisdiction's putting all these pieces together. I need a search and rescue team. I need the ability to provide emergency communication. So let me go to my resources. If you're on one of those teams, you need to know what you need to support the mission. So whether it's portable operation or if you're even setting up a little bit of a camp, say by an incident command post to be able to communicate, knowing what gear you have, knowing what gear you need personally. So right now, we talk about Memorial Day, the gravity of Memorial Day, but we traditionally look at it as the kickoff to summer, and it's a balmy 51 degrees in the Mid-Atlantic right now and raining. So if I'm going to be out supporting emergency communication for my local jurisdiction in 51 degrees and rain, I'm not going out there in shorts and t-shirt. And it's a simple example, but knowing what you need to be healthy, comfortable, and provide the service that you want to provide. So I'm a big gear guy, as you know.
Well, let's get into the bags. From time to time, I'll send Don a message to see what he's carrying. I think the last time I asked you about a bag, you were looking at like a sling type of bag. This was, not to say that's your only thing, but maybe you were packing or had a specific chore or thought in mind. For something like this, we can break this down into multiple things. We know that it's all scenario based. You're going away, something big happened in the world. Let's pack a bag for a search and rescue. You're part of a team that handles emergency communications. These things always seem to happen around dusk. It can't happen at a good appropriate time. It's going to be when you're not ready. What do you want to put in that bag and make sure that you're going to be gone for the evening, perhaps. You can make a run back home if you need to. What's your everyday carry bag?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we talked about that a couple weeks ago. And just as a quick aside, it was funny because my son must have been eavesdropping on us, and he came in after the show and he said that he wanted to build a dugout bag. I told him they're bug out bags. You're thinking about baseball, but we started to put one together. So he's got his little dugout or bug out bag that's partially equipped. But yeah, so I think the first thing I'm looking at are conditions. Like, what do I need to be comfortable? Do I need a change of clothes? Do I need warmer clothes? Granted, in these type of operations, you're generally cared for fairly well. So the jurisdiction's going to recognize that you're out there providing a service. So as best they can, they're going to try to feed you. They're going to try to get you water. But I'm not going to rely upon that. So I might be throwing some trail mix, some snacks, a bottle of water into a bag. But then, as you mentioned, there's never a good time, right? It never happens when it's sunny and 70 degrees. So I'm packing appropriate lighting. I have a headlamp that I like to use sometimes if I'm walking around the woods. I have a couple flashlights that I'm very fond of that I'll take. So those types of things. But even if it does happen in the middle of the day when it's sunny and 70, I'm thinking about I need to put a big floppy hat on this thing because if nothing else, if I'm not reflecting the sun, I'm turning red in about 30 minutes time. Sunscreen. It's not really a difficult problem. We just don't think about it until we're in the moment and say, oh, I should have packed that.
Yeah, that's the thing. 20 minutes with this without a lid, and I'm cooked. I mean, I'm just cooked. I'm no good. I don't want to help you anymore. Sorry. I'm burnt. That's a good practice to put, some small incidental things. I think that way when I'm traveling, like out of reach, like where it's going to be inconvenient to just turn around and go back. Whether it's 45 minutes in the car or whatever it is, or I'm going to be gone. What are those items? And I encourage, and I know Don does too, put your comments here. Let us know what's in your EDC bag. I'm always carrying the flashlight, some sort of knife. I think that's one of the best tools that was ever created and going back many, 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 many years. And the sunscreen, the very simple things. I've known guys that say, I'll take water with me, and that's not enough. You know what I mean? Let's talk about, I know we got so many different things we could talk about. Say you turn up, you got your bag packed up, you're all good. You turn up, you're a volunteer, the jurisdiction is in control, which we talk about. They know how they need to use you. What should a ham do that's appropriate and proper? You're a professional at this, so you may or may not see these guys roaming up to you like, hey, can I help you? What's a good best practice for a fella just making a move and is able-bodied? I can help you if you need me. Where do they go?
So I think there's a couple things. One, you shouldn't. Let me walk this back before I say you shouldn't. Generally speaking, you shouldn't start helping until you've checked in with somebody. So your accountability is going to be important because once we have volunteers, it's no different than the paid folks in the jurisdiction. We're responsible for your well-being. We're responsible for your safety. So you should never show up necessarily unannounced. So if I'm a ham, and I'll use the ham perspective, I'm going to come and I'm going to be an expert in my field. So I'm going to provide whatever service they need as a radio operator. I'm going to check in. I'm going to be accountable. I'm going to take direction because it's not about me. I'm providing a service. So if they say, hey, what are your capabilities? Are you able to accompany this team with a handheld? And I can do it, then I'm going to provide that service. Or if I can set up a portable station and that's what they need, I'll do that. So I'd say the first thing, other than having the gear you need, of course, is checking in, finding who's responsible, who's in charge, being accountable that you're there, and then finding out what they need you to do and providing that expertise as best you can. And it's tough because, especially with the last case, you're talking about a missing child. That tugs at everybody. But I've also seen situations where you get folks in from a bunch of different disciplines and everyone wants to tell you how you should be doing what you're doing. And that grows old quickly. So be an expert in your domain, but stay in your lane and just take direction. It's not about me at that point. If I'm showing up as a ham, I'm not there to run the show. I'm there to provide that service.
And you don't want to be part of the problem. And I think checking in, I mean, that's got to be essential. Is there commonly a list of volunteers? That way, Christian is here. He brought his HT, his suntan lotion. He's out here. He's got a mobile rig, and he's gone off. But he hasn't gone off missing. At least, is there some sort of checks and balances as you go through the day in these situations where, okay, we've got Don, we've got Sidecar Steve, Christian's here and accounted for. Is that how that works?
Yeah, so there's two ways, quite frankly, it could go down. So no notice event, something bad happens right away. Sometimes folks gravitate towards the scene. You might not have asked for them. That's usually the most challenging for us because then we have to figure out who we have, what they represent, and then be accountable for them. But in the case with this missing child, it sounds like the jurisdiction put out the call. So I'm assuming, I don't know the particulars of the story, but I'm assuming that the jurisdiction had a relationship with the local Aries group. They said, hey, we need you. This is where you're going to report. Let me know who's coming as best you can. And even if you don't have names in advance, the jurisdiction knows that, hey, they just put out the call to Aries. So it's reasonable. I should expect Aries members to show up. Once they show up, you check them in. There's a formal process in incident command and the incident command system for checking in and having the status of the resources that you need. So Christian shows up. I have Christian. He's got his gear. I can account for what he has, and he is available. Boom. So I check the box. And then before we would either, and this of course depends on the length of what we're trying to do, but before we'd bring either a new group or we would call it quits for the evening and wrap it up in that we either found the child or we decided it's now a recovery mission. I'm going to make sure that everyone that checked in is now checking out, and that especially if they've been there for a long time, they're well enough to get back because we're still responsible for you. So if you showed up first thing and you worked 12 hours and it was 100 degrees, I might sit you down in a cooling tent for a while before I let you go home. We need to take care of the folks that are taking care of us. So, but ultimately it's going to be a matter of making sure that every resource, whether that's person, gear, or whatever, that you launched out at the problem has come back in, it's in good shape, and you feel comfortable enough to send it back home.
All right. Thank you for that. And leave your comments below the video. That way we can establish a dialogue, keep the conversation going. We hit a lot of special topics today. We've got gear, what's in your EDC, which is always, it varies, but people love to talk about everything that they're carrying, process, so many things to unpack here on our Hour 73 segment. I love the dugout bag. I think that is the coolest thing. If there's a, Cal Ripken something can be put in there, just a tchotchke.
A bobblehead. Yeah.
The Cal Ripken bobblehead, whatever works, it's got to be good luck.
It warmed my heart when he said that. It was, how can you be mad at someone wanting to build a dugout bag? But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to have a chance to talk about gear across many disciplines. You mentioned the EDC or a bug out bag, but even in the home, even in your station. I think our last real conversation was post-Colonial Pipeline, and maybe I'm not an expert in this, but dare I say that a plastic trash bag's probably not the appropriate gear for getting gas. So there's a lot of ways we can go with this.
Yeah, I think that's proven. I think that's a proven one now. Yeah, since that time, that use has already been proven not a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Don. I appreciate you being here. We'll come back and tackle some more topics next week. 73 for now.
All right, 73, my friend. Have a good weekend.
You too.
The Kilo Station again. Kilo Zero Sierra Tango Hotel. You're 5'9". Right.
Brothers and sisters, I believe I have found a new way for you to support the content you enjoy and the community that you find value in. It's called buymeacoffee.com. It is not a commercial. It's a new way, and I've moved away from Patreon, which is going to hurt me for a little bit. But in the long run, I believe that content creators should have creative freedom. There shouldn't be any censorship coming down from a platform in the way that you create. But moreover, on your side, Do you really need to have a sign up? Do you really need to have an account? And do they really need to take between 5 and 12% of your donations? No, I'm out. But I've moved over to buymeacoffee.com. It's as easy as that. No sign-ups, no accounts. Give if you want. If you don't want to, give as much as you want. Become a sustaining member. It's all there, but it's new. So I'm here to tell you about that. Buymeacoffee.com/K0STH is where you find us. And it's an easier way, a cleaner way, it seems, to support the content you enjoy. Now let's get you back up to the show.
Back to Net Control with Christian, K0STH.
Okie dokie now. Thank you all for your patience today. It's a lot of great topics going around and great guests. All my friends are here. We're talking about what's happening. And you know, I got to bring in a fella here who is been outed, so to speak. It's our friend Sidecar Steve. Sidecar Steve is now known. You see him there for the right hand. Look at the strength in the right hand. He's pulling my motorbike right across the speedway. So Sidecar Steve, people writing in already. Where is this Sama Mama? Where is he? He's supposed to be here. And look at this. He made it into the show. Hello there, sir. Good day.
The right hand.
There's the right hand. Look at it. Look at that. That's pull the bike right through people. No, people would go off the road. It would be just a big pile of metal. I hope you're having a great day. Thank you for your patience here as we get an hour in, and we're bringing our friend Don's back. Don's back here. So many questions and things to talk about. We talked about the Young Ham of the Year. You guys, of course, know each other. And welcome back, Don.
Unfortunately,
yeah. You say the right hand.
Yeah, man, he's got that kung fu grip going, man.
This could be that right hand. It's the right hand. It's just will pull so much.
Whoa!
We'll pull the whole thing over. Don says, now this is the part of the show where you want to get the children out. This is this is not the.
It's going.
Cut it
down
here.
in the hell.
Cut it here. Cut it here. What you smoking there? The kids call them the blunts, but I think you like to call them cigars.
It started out being 6 inches long.
That's what she said.
A little shorter now. It's a quorum. I'm not.
But
sure
honey,
if you
this
can
is 6 inches.
It's a quorum. It's from Nicaragua. It's a good little cigar. It's not an expensive cigar, but I do like them. So
there was some questions that came in, Sidecar. Did you pull any? There were some things for Don.
Oh, there was a lot about with B.B. King and then other musicians that came up that people were talking about, and for me, one of the impacts a musician that left was Eddie Van Halen for me, and but that connection goes back because we were in high school together, basically. So the Van Halen brothers being in Pasadena and growing up in Pasadena, so it there was the connection there because I knew them as a garage band and party band before they became famous as they did back in the 80s.
Can't imagine seeing Eddie Van Halen in high school. I mean,
oh man, wouldn't that be wild? I saw somebody in the chat room mention Stevie Ray Vaughan. That as well.
Stevie Ray Vaughan, yep.
Such a talent. I mean, just snuffed out. So Hendrix. I mean, so many of them snuffed out so young that had not even hit their potential yet.
Well, I mean, and you look at Stevie Ray, and this is where our conversations go on the on-air side. And if you have a question for Don or any of us, put a Q next to it, and then put your question in the chat, and we'll pull those up. And there was a couple I at least remember one. Stevie Ray, the lineage from Stevie Ray goes Stevie Ray to Hendrix to Albert King, and you can see the soup, the gumbo, if you will, that made Stevie. But he was an original. But he played with something, and there's a great PBS show with Albert King and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and if you've never seen it, you've got to watch it because all the great blues players, from Buddy Guy to the B.B. King and Albert King, they christened this guy. They put Stevie Ray Vaughan on this pedestal. He was a very modest kid, and his brother was a pretty good guitar player at the time. Go ahead.
That was the whole thing. Is he heard his brother Jimmy playing, much younger than Jimmy Vaughan, and one day I think as the story goes, if I remember this right, he walks in, picks up Jimmy's guitar, and starts noodling on it, and it comes to him naturally, and Jimmy's like off in another room going, "What the heck is this?" and walks in, and it's Stevie Ray just cranking. So I believe he was self-taught. I mean, just didn't take a lesson, as I recall. It just the music was in him and needed to come out.
And his brother said he never played the same solo the same way twice, and he probably was listening to vinyl records. And Stevie Ray is at the top of there's those classic guys up there, B.B. King, and then in terms of, because I found him through rock radio. It was Pride and Joy, and as a kid, and I'm like, oh, what's that? And then you find Hendrix, or then you find Albert King, and then you go, that makes sense. Hey, someone wanted me to ask you about your voice on repeaters. Can you talk about that?
Oh, the W4 KEV repeater, and that's in Knoxville, Tennessee. And actually, I think it's on the I don't know if it's on the whole system, but Kevin, W4 KEV up there, has a linked repeater system all through the state of Tennessee, literally from east to west. It may be the largest repeater link up in the country, or pretty close to it. Maybe not in the country, but for sure in Tennessee, and maybe on the eastern half. But I've known Kevin for a long time. Kevin was a broadcast engineer down here in New Orleans, and he said, "Hey," and Kevin's a smart ass. If you know Kevin, he's he
ain't right.
Boy ain't right. No, he ain't. No, he ain't near right.
Like we are right.
He's got 52 cards in the deck, but half of them are jokers.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway, so he says, "Hey, can you cut some IDs for me for the repeater?" I'm like, "Sure." So I don't know. I cut 15 or 20 of them, and it's just stupid stuff like the other day, my wife asked me, "What's on the TV?" I told her, "Dust." And that's how the fight began. You're listening to the W4 KEV repeater. Another one is Kevin has about as much hair as you guys do, and it's like, with less coverage than the repeater owner's hairline. This is the W4 K, and that's just how it goes. It's that real smarmy.
You're on one of the locals here. I hear you, and I can't remember the call signs of the repeater, but I hear you, and I'm like, you just can't escape this guy. He's everywhere.
Yeah, I'll do them for anybody. Just send me an email and ask, and I'll be more than happy to cut some IDs for anything you need.
For a small donation.
I got a request actually from a former Young Ham of the Year not too long ago, and I'm just waiting for him to send me exactly what he wants. But if you want custom IDs for
his system,
who
for Skyler?
No, down in Houston. Try his name will come to. I'm horrible with names, but anyway,
Here's another question from Pastor Joe. Pastor Joe's good to have around for me because I'm in the basket. It's on fire.
You're a heathen.
He will light a candle. I say light a candle. Keep me on a prayer list. Whatever you good men do. He asked, Don, is that a real Panama hat? Do you know where real Panama hats come from?
Yeah, I replied to that. Yes, this one is actually, my wife got me this for Father's Day about 12 years ago, and it used to not look nearly as good as this. One of the first times I wore it, I got thrown into a swimming pool.
Oh, dear.
And it went into the pool with me, and it came out looking like a soggy potato chip, and I didn't wear it for probably 12 years. In fact, just recently, I sent it off to a custom hat maker up in Oregon. His name is Art Fawcett. The guy does amazing work. He did his best to bring it back, but couldn't necessarily bring it back all the way. I also took it to a hat company in New Orleans to have done. And it sat in the box forever, and I started looking at YouTube videos on how to like redo hats and stuff. And so we have a clothes steamer, and I got the steamer out and I started messing with it, and it doesn't look too bad. But so this one is from Ecuador. It's a real Panama hat. It's not a Monte Cristi, the $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 hat. It's a Cuenca or Cuenca. It is a $100 hat like 12 years ago, but it's nice. It was a Father's Day present. But Art did a really nice custom band for me. This, you probably can't see the color, but it just came with a basic black band, and this is like a really dark green. But what's nice about this is Art Fawcett's trademark, is the way that he does the knot on the bow.
Cool.
Nice.
And very, very cool. You need to, Google him, because there are some videos of Art making hats, and he does beautiful fur felt fedoras and custom work. And in fact, I believe he's retiring this year. But just look up Art Fawcett, Fawcett, and you'll find him. Good stuff.
Okay, cool. Hey, I wanted to ask you, during the pandemic this last year from hell, 18 months from hell, did you take up any new studies? Did you learn anything? Did you pick up any new hobbies? What were you up to during 2020?
Well, I was working from home from beginning in March, recording commercials in my home studio for iHeart. And then in November, they decided that they did not need me anymore. They eliminated my position. So at age 60, I'm looking at a career change, because there are no radio jobs. And so I am in the process of getting my real estate license. Hopefully I'll be taking the licensing test in the next week or two, and I will transition into Don 2.0 as a real estate professional.
Oh, good. And the housing market, I mean, that's something else right now. People can
crazy.
sell their house so fast. This is a good time for you to come around. I hope you make all the
It's
money.
amazing.
Yeah, me too.
If you have a question for Don, you can put Q and then put your question down in there. Sidecar, did you have any questions for Don that are appropriate for viewers?
Wait, hang on, let me get ready.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for this. I got my finger on the dump button.
Oh,
Ready.
we'll save it for later, for Don and I's special time.
Yeah, not in front of the girl.
Jesus.
Yeah, we don't
Not in
want to
front,
judge.
not in front of the girl. No. And by girl, we mean Christian.
Christy, you've called me
Christine, yeah.
Christy before.
Christine, yeah.
Like, what the
That's what I
hell?
need to do. You need a custom ID for 100 watts in a wire. This
do?
is 100 watts in a wire. Now back to you, Christine.
Yeah, I don't need that. I'm not going to be able to.
You could bring up the whip.
Don, so these are how conversations go during. I could bring up the assless chaps. Those of you who have been around long enough know that there was a time I was in the chaps. You'd had to be there. There are pictures, and people have done illustrations of me in these chaps. It's the weirdest thing. I had to move away from it because it was getting really too weird.
Your chaps and my kilt.
Yeah, your kilt. Hey, talk about Hamfest coming back and your expectations for. You can kind of feel right now.
Oh God, yeah.
How people just want to get back and they want to do things, and they're so sick of looking at screens and Zoom sessions. Talk about your anticipation for Hamfest.
Yeah. It's been great, especially a lot of us working from home and maybe having the time to get on the HF radio more and make more contacts, or, get on Echolink or D-Star or Fusion or DMR or whatever and make a lot of contacts around the world. But you know what we're missing? We're missing this. We're missing the eyeball QSO. And I, for one, am jonesing. The last Hamfest I went to was January 2020. And now here we are, the end of May 2021. And thankfully, the kind folks at the Huntsville Hamfest are doing it August 21st. And in fact, Mark Brown is actually in the chat room, or was earlier. Mark is the general chairman of the Huntsville Hamfest. And he does a great job. As much as I love Dayton and Xenia and Hamvention, the biggest one on the planet, depending on the year. I think sometimes maybe Japan maybe, or Friedrichshafen maybe. But anyway, that's like the gold standard, Hamvention. I think I like Huntsville better. It's easily in the top 5 Hamfests in the country. Probably, I would say, top 10 in the world. I love it. I mean, absolutely love it. It's in Huntsville, Alabama, which is a huge tech town. NASA is there. The Redstone Arsenal is there. That's where Werner von Braun helped create the Saturn V. They're in Huntsville, Alabama, and Space Camp is there. There's so much tech in Huntsville that it's a great town. And of course, you can tour NASA and tour Space Camp and everything else. But it's a friendly Hamfest. That's the thing. They say they are the friendliest Hamfest in the world, and I believe them, because as soon as you walk in there, it's like there's always somebody in a green shirt that's willing to help you. And even as far as even the load in, like on Friday afternoon or whatever, Ted Randall from WTWW tells this story. One of the first times they went in there, Ted always broadcasts live from Huntsville. So he's got a trailer full of equipment that he brings. And he pulls in, and all of a sudden they're unloading the thing for him. It's like, anything else you need us to carry? Where do you want us to put this, Ted? And it's just like, Ted didn't have to lift a finger.
Nice.
It's just they did everything. And that's the way that they are. They're all like that at Huntsville. It is literally the friendliest Hamfest on the planet. And it's one of the best. The thing I like about it is everything is in the Von Braun Convention Center, and everything is under one roof. The dealer show, the flea market, everything is under one roof. And this year they have expanded to where they have the entire hall because they're expanding the spacing because of COVID-19. There will be 12-foot wide aisles at Huntsville this year.
Nice.
And you know how tight sometimes Hamfest gets, especially big Hamfest, where you can't, you're trying to walk down the middle of the aisle and everybody's standing in your way because nobody can see past the end of their nose, and just everybody's just taking up their own little space with no regard for anybody else, which is a pet peeve of mine. Take your conversation over to a corner.
Yep.
Get out in
And
front of
then
the boat
everybody
anchor. I'm
has their
thinking about
nose
buying.
down because they're
Right,
looking down.
exactly.
They're
Well,
looking
with
and they're
12-foot
just not paying
aisles,
attention.
Yeah, and with 12-foot aisles, you're not going to have that. It's going to be so much space. The flea market is amazing. It's not nearly as big, of course, as Dayton, but it's a really good high-tech flea market. There's a bunch of cool stuff there. I love it. I love everything about the Hamfest. And what else is nice about it is the convention center, the Hamfest site, is attached to the host hotel, the Embassy Suites, via a sky bridge. So if you're staying in the Embassy, and it's sold out now, by the way, there are no more rooms left at the Embassy. But if you're staying at the Embassy, you don't even have to leave the hotel. You get up, you get dressed,
And that's
you
where
walk
you'll
across
find
the
Don
sky
over at
bridge.
the bar in the embassy.
Yeah. There are a lot of us down at the bar in the Embassy. A lot of us.
So you
But,
don't even
there are
have
still-
to leave the air conditioning.
Oh, you don't. No, you don't.
No.
There are three hotels listed on the Hamfest website as far as lodging, and the third one still has rooms, to my knowledge. It's I can't remember the name of it, but it's the third one in the list. But hamfest.org is the name of the website for Huntsville. It's the easiest Hamfest in the world to remember, probably outside of hamvention.org. Hamfest.org. Go and check it out. And by all means, wherever you are in the country, it's worth the trip to Huntsville. It really is. Love Huntsville. I can't wait to go and see people. There are going to be a lot of ham radio YouTubers at Huntsville as well this year. So,
Question in from
the
our
word.
office in Amsterdam, I believe the red light district. Don, do you do CW? And if so, what key is your favorite?
I learned CW. I got licensed when the CW requirement was still in effect in '95, and I got my 5 word a minute, and I was studying for my Tech Plus, and I was studying to try to get up to the 13 for general, and I hit that wall at 11, and just kind of stuck there. And then when they eliminated the CW requirement, I went ahead and continued on via the no code route to extra. So I don't do any CW. I do have a really nice iambic keyer. I forget the brand. It was a kit that I bought at Dayton years ago to kind of give me an incentive to go out and actually get more proficient at code, which one of these days I'll try to find the time to do that. It's like everything else, you either have time or money. You never have both at the same time. So,
Well, here's your opportunity.
so I
Don.
don't have a what's that? Oh, I know. The CQ
Right
Worldwide.
there.
I was looking at that last night. I know. It's
man.
crazy. It's crazy.
That's
Yeah, and
20
they said,
meters
and,
right now.
yeah,
So
and,
yep,
they said
exactly.
eliminating the CW requirement would kill code. Yeah, it's more
Nope.
popular now than
So-
it ever has been. Yeah, so that's something I'm working on is doing the code, getting in it and getting on CW. I'm working on that.
Well, this is the portion of the program, and Don will hang out with us here. We take a few questions each week for Sidecar Steve. He doesn't want to know what the questions are ahead of time, so the disclaimer is if we don't know or he's thrown, then we'll go and do a little research for you. But yet,
Yeah.
I think he has got them all
You're going to
right.
get a two for Memorial Day weekend. Both
gonna
Don
get
and
it.
I can answer it.
Yeah, I'm here
And
too.
Remember,
I'm just
if
sitting
you're-
here.
If you're typing questions in the chat for Sidecar Steve, remember, type slow because he can't read fast.
You heard it here first. You heard it here first. I'm not sure what that was. I'm going to get sued. This is I knew this was not good. Question number
We're
one.
just getting warmed up.
Just getting warmed up. This will be the stream that goes, and once Don's cigar goes, then we'll know it's over.
Thank you for joining us for the last episode of 100 Watts in a Wire.
Right. Favorite method of hanging antennas in trees?
Ropes is, but yeah, just throwing a rope over a branch and everything. But my favorite method is, you get the rope over it, but then with the rope there, you have a pulley at the end of the rope. So you want to keep, and then the pulley will then have the wire antenna itself or the support rope for the antenna. And that way you can take some weights and that way when the tree sways in the breeze, then the antenna won't take the brunt and snap. Christian knows very well back in the day of not using pulleys and weights, and has learned, like all of us have. And so that's the method I like to use, is just to have a support rope that supports a pulley, which in turn then your wire antenna.
How are you getting that rope over? What's your method for you? I know you don't use trees, but what would be a favorite for you if you had to hang a rope in a tree? Is it fishing line? Is it whatever?
I've used a lug nut and a fishing pole with some 10-pound test, and I just flip it up and over. But now I have a new secret weapon that I haven't tried yet, but I'm gonna do it the next time I need to hang a wire in a tree. Is I'll use a drone to pull up a fishing line, and then get that up and over the tree, and then on the other side. So
I tell you what,
Don?
I have a it's like a 7-foot fishing pole, I think 6 or 7 foot. It's got a spinning reel on it, and I took a golf ball, drilled a hole through the middle of the golf ball, and I tied the fishing line to that. And I can get really good height and fairly good accuracy, and it's a lot easier to see than a lug nut. And plus, it doesn't have any sharp edges on it, so if you get the lug nut caught, it's not going to cut the line like the threads of the lug nut would. And then when when the golf ball drops down, you tie a small line to that. Just put that line right through the middle of the hole of the golf ball and tie it off, and pull it right back up, and then you can pull your heavier line. And I don't use the pulleys. I really should. Most of all these antennas that I have up here are wire antennas, and they're all hung from trees. And the pulley is really, really good, because eventually, and ask me how I know, the support line will grow into the bark, and then the wind will come up, and then it will pop your wire, and then you got no way to get that wire back down, and so now you got to make a new piece of wire. And so, but I need to do the pulley method. I've actually got like 40 feet of tower here I need to put up one of these days. That goes back to the whole time and money thing. You have one, you don't have the other. But I really like the golf ball on the end of the fishing line trick. It works really well. Just drill a hole, like a little 1/8-inch hole right through the middle of it. Yeah.
I
use a lug nut because I am a lug nut. So, the two go together.
We do that.
Yeah, they're close by. He carries them in his pockets. I've used a couple of different methods. I like the fishing pole. I had a big bay rod. These are the ones that have about this much of a handle below the reel, and I modified it. And I got so good at hanging antennas. But as Steve brought up a sensitive topic years ago, I would tie these ends off like guitar strings. I had no... And they were bling, bling, plop, and I was getting so frustrated.
Going for a high C, and it was kind of like high C.
Oh, they looked beautiful. They looked so great. And I would go away in a rain. I'm like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah, yep, exactly.
But I use a fishing pole. I modified this bay rod, and I use, nuts, whatever I can find to throw over. And it's enough. I got so good at it when I would go fishing. Right in the fish's mouth. I was really good. And sadly, it was just because I had made so many mistakes. I never had any success with the slingshot. My early Elmer had one, and he got so frustrated with it. He brought it over and got frustrated, and I was like, I guess I won't mess with that. Because that
was another method I did, was with a slingshot and the lug nut, being the lug nut that I am, was took like a bass rod and just broke it down in half, had my son hold the fishing rod and the bait reel, and then I would take the slingshot with the lug nut and then try that, and that seemed to work out pretty good. But you got to point it in that direction, and the key was using a 10-pound test line. You don't want to go anything heavier than that.
Right.
And then it was slowly pulling everything back, and then snap! It's like, son of a mama.
Hey, you
And
know
I've
those.
gotta start all over again. So we've gone
got a-
through, various iterations
Yeah.
over the years.
Mhm.
I've got a funny field day related antenna hanging story since field day's coming up. This is several years ago. Was at the local club field day, and Steve Calcagno, N5SC, a dear friend of mine. He and I first went to Dayton together in '99. That was our first trip, and we're gonna hang up it was a G5 RV or an off-center fed DIPA, whatever it was, and nobody brought a fishing pole, nobody brought anything, slingshot, anything else to put it up there. So Steve's like, what are we got to have some weight. So Steve goes over and he picks up an unopened jar of pickle relish that we had for the hamburgers. Okay. And he ties the line around the neck, just under the cap, that indentation in the pickle relish. And we're in a park. Okay. And there's a jogging path around the park. And I think you know where this is going. Steve picks out a tree and he hums it. And I mean, it's one of those things where as soon as it leaves his hand, it's like hitting a home run in baseball. As soon as you hear the crack of the bat, you know it's going over the fence. As soon as it left his hand, you could see the arc, and it went straight up and straight down and like right in the middle of the jogging path. So, well, that worked real well. Are you going to try the mayonnaise now, Steve? What?
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it was just
Condiments.
Yeah.
Let,
Another one was hanging wire antennas. How many extras does it take to put a wire antenna up in a tree in a thunderstorm on an aluminum ladder? 2. And thankfully, they're both still here. But don't try that. We did that too. I think we probably all have.
This in from the man of the cloth, the one who gives us some sort of weird moral ground to stand on. Say, he's calling you this. You got to be careful, the man of the cloth. But I do like that song. Burning it down, dang it down.
That's actually my wife and I's our favorite song, because on the family compound here are the in-laws. So I've got my brother-in-law over here. I've got my mother and father-in-law over here. So it's, clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here we are, stuck in the middle with you.
In the middle with you. I do like that song.
I do too. Love
All
Jerry
right.
Rafferty.
Next question is, where should the ARRL focus its attention in 2021? Any thoughts about?
Man,
We got new leadership there now.
I go back to the youth. I mean, if we don't bring new blood into this hobby and modernize it, there won't be a hobby. So that's where I go back to. I think the ARRL should focus on learning how to attract more youth into this hobby. And, I think it's still seen as an old man's hobby. You picture, you mention ham radio to someone, they go, oh, is that CB? Or if they know what it is, they're like, oh yeah, my grandpa did that. And to me, it's like they envision some old guy hunched over a Morse code key with a big tube type radio tapping out Morse code. And it ain't that way. I mean, we're the most high tech hobby, I think. Yeah, exactly. And you got to let them know all the tech and get them off their cell phone and, figure out a way. That to me is the key, is bringing youth into ham radio.
We definitely need to focus on the youth, kind of get in and use the avenues that the youth are using today, and kind of go into that arena, social media, spend a little bit more time into that. Us old farts, hey, we're just we're here. But, speaking about youth, I just came across a video from KD9LFZ, and her and KD9ORR did a Parks on the Air activation. They did a YouTube video, just super enthusiastic. They're just having a good time, got out there with their G90 and was just having a great time making contacts from a park and freezing their tails off and things like that. So, I mean, I think the league needs to focus in on that. They already have us in the league already, so we need to keep the hobby going. They're representing us in the hobby. They need to, foster it, and in the end, it becomes more membership for them.
But it's not just that we need to get the league to focus on it. We all, as individuals and clubs, need to do the grassroots thing and focus on it as well. One of the clubs here in New Orleans set up a really nice ham radio display at a mini maker fair several years ago, and that was one of the things that the Dayton focused on makers several years ago. But get into that. Go to the schools and get into some of the STEM programs like robotics and things like that, and show them that what you can do with ham radio. It's like, hey, you can use amateur radio frequencies to control your robot. There's a million different things you can do with ham radio besides getting on a mic and saying CQ, CQ, CQ and trying to talk to Antarctica.
Well, the other thing is like with robotics, I mean, they're using Wi-Fi, so 2.4 gigahertz.
Yeah, a lot of them are, right.
But guess what? If you have your ham license, now you can run higher power, which means your robotics can be farther away instead of being, up close. And now you can start, the possibilities go on beyond that. And even in the 5.8 gig, which is, there's the unlicensed portions, there's also the licensed amateur portion. So now you can run higher power, which means your robotic devices can be farther and farther away.
And all you got to do is name that SSID as your call sign, and that takes care of the station ID part of it.
Exactly. So
you do.
Exposure, I think, is the big thing. We found it through exposure, and we got to find that clever way to get in front of the kids and to show them, and we've got a great history to build off of too. We can say, hey, you like the television, right? Guess what? Hey, you like computers, right? Guess what? You like cell phones. Guess what? Guess who was responsible for helping bring all this sort of get? You like the Mars exploring stuff? You interested in? So there's so many ways. You mentioned bringing up Field Day. One of the things I get kind of about is the way we present ourselves during Field Day. There's like our talking points, these standard talking points. We get this television time, which the three of us know, and everybody would watch this, would know how much it costs to get any ad time on television. You get 2 or 3 minutes to talk about Field Day, and I think we're stuck in this rut. When all, we got to expand our message a little bit better in how we present this package, because you could drop in 1986, anything that they were doing back then with what they did this year or last year, it's pretty much the same kind of messaging, and they got to say, is this working? And that's not just the league. That's radio clubs, how are we handling showing people around to get on the air type of stations. And it's not a rant. I just think that we need to freshen it up a bit, freshen up our approach to exposing these people and their parents, which are, ones that have the money. Any thoughts on that, Don?
No, I completely agree with you. We've got to find a way, to make it interesting to them, to where it dovetails into what they're doing on a day-to-day basis with, video gaming or whatever. And Jerry Ellsworth is working on. She's a very prominent ham. She has a company called.
What's that?
Oh, she's so smart. I know you're talking.
Something five. Anyway, it was on Ham Nation. Go back and rewatch Ham Nation from last week. We have Jerry Ellsworth on there, and she is working on some VR goggles where it actually lays out in 3D on a table in front of you or up on a wall screen. And she's working on applications for ham radio for that. And if you can show something like that to kids and say, hey, this would be really, really great for your Xbox or whatever, but here's what you can do with ham radio with that as well. You want to reach out and talk to a country or whatever, you reach out on this map and you touch that country and your antenna moves and your radio tunes to it and you're right there. There's a million different applications for that. But,
Well, just think
yeah,
about wearing the VR goggles and you're sitting there like working the DX contest right now
Right,
with
exactly.
CW, and you
Yeah.
now have that pan adapter all in front of you, and all you got to do is just reach your finger. Okay, I
Reach
want to
out,
work that station, boot, and
touch that
everything's
signal,
coming
and bang,
through,
you're there. Yeah, exactly.
and then boom, 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 and you could be
Right.
sitting in your living room or on your back deck like you are, and the radio's doing everything, and you're just working the contest. I mean, because this is something
Exactly.
that the youth love. They love the competitive sport and getting into it. Look at some of our Young Ham of the Year recipients, like Marty Solowick.
Yeah.
I mean, big
Yeah.
contesters, and all the other
Huge.
youth that are just big into contests because they love that competitive sports. Yeah,
Mhm.
there's guys talk about it. Oh, the contesters are, screwing up the bands for us on the weekends and this and that. But you know what? There's people there. That's their focus into the hobby, and that which is great. And this is a great way to get them in, and then in between contests, and then they can start, exploring in depth more of the hobby here. And but we got to get that hook to kind of bring them in, and contesting, robotics. I think FT8 is a great mode as one of the digital modes, because a lot of youth like to operate through, keyboard to keyboard. How about having an app that you can, from your cell phone, that you now can operate FT8? And there has to be one out there. I haven't looked into it, so there's all kinds of ways.
And getting back to the grassroots effort, talking about robotics and stuff in the schools. Not only robotics, but the robotics is great for controlling the robotics, but get into like your junior ROTC programs, and maybe you can talk about MCOM and how that might dovetail into what maybe they might be doing on drills or whatever. There's a bunch of different ways to get in there. The science class, maybe show them that, hey, we can try to set up a space station contact, or at the very least, we can go outside with a handheld Yagi and a handheld and make satellite contacts.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bunch of different ways that you can, I think, attract youth into the hobby. You just got to think about it.
Yeah, I tell my kids we'll be out there in the old shed, which I plan to do again this weekend. Daddy's not plugged in to anything. I'm not plugged in. There's no lights. When it gets dark here, there's no lights here, but there could be. I'm not plugged in. I'm going to make this contact, and I'm going to talk to somebody in even Minnesota. The fact that you're not, and they're just sort of exposed to it. They may not go to it. It's just like jazz. You got to expose people to Ellington, and if they don't dig it, okay. But at least you were exposed to jazz, and you don't have to love it if you don't want to. But
but maybe 10, 12 years down the road, they might, they'll hear Ellington again, and then it's like, oh, I remember hearing that, and then that will, continue on. It's like, hey, my grandfather was a ham radio operator, or my dad was somebody in the family, and it's that seed that we talk about. Right. You plant the seed, and then you just keep watering it, and eventually the seed will grow. It might take a few years, or it might not happen, but at least you're planting the seed.
Yeah, and you got to figure out what the gateway drug is.
Mm-hmm.
For me, 40 years ago, it was CB radio. For Christian, it was CB radio. Probably for you too, Steve. For those of us in this generation, I'm 60, it was CB radio. Well, that's probably not an option now, especially, kids don't even know what CB radio is anymore. But you got to get them where they live, and that's the whole video gaming. And another great way to do that is set up a hotspot, a D-Star or a DMR hotspot or something, and go in there with a handheld radio on 1/10 of a watt and say, I can talk around the world with this because it's tied into the internet. Oh, the internet. Mm-hmm. I like the internet. I can do that with the internet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can do that and a whole lot more with ham radio and the internet or whatever. You got to figure out what the gateway drug is and get them hooked.
Yeah, and challenge them to make it better. Even the ones that are like, you know what? This comes back to Young Ham of the Year award. Is okay, you see this technology and it's pretty cool and it holds up and it still does what it was intended to do and more. And for the ones that are like, that's old fashioned, I got my phone. Improve this. Improve it. You see it's cool. What can you do with it now? And I think that fits into the Young Ham of the Year. Those kids are going for it.
Work without the internet.
You know, the
That's
ones that
the
are like,
challenge.
you know what would be cool? You know what would be cool? And build on it, because that's how television came to
Right.
be. That's how this
Right.
came to be, the phones and all
Right.
that. Anyway.
You can
I
do
thi-
all this with ham radio through the internet, but here, let me show you what happens when the internet goes down.
Right.
Now, here's what you can do without the internet.
Oh,
Check
exactly.
this out.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
you're welcome, League. I'm glad we could solve that problem for you. And just next problem. Here's one talking about the science of things. And I'm not sure that I'm not qualified for this, but why does height change the SWR readings on antennas? I know I can just say that when I'm at 25 feet and I'm portable, which is a good height for me, I think I can go out there. I'm comfortable putting up the mast, tying it up, putting up myself. I have to tune that antenna, though, to reflect that height. I'm up at 50 feet here at my house. That's a kind of different ballpark. These two are going to play differently. Why is that, Steve?
Yes, because it's a reflected. Your signal is being reflected from the ground, so that's why when we have a low antenna, we have the NVIS antenna. Is that your signal is basically being reflected off the ground, and standing wave ratio is a relationship of your forward power and then power coming back. It's even though your antenna is tuned perfectly, it's still going to see some power coming back. Now, to have it to where it's going to be completely non-transparent, you got to put it in the null, which is 1/2 wavelength or any multiple of that. So half wavelength, full wavelength. That way you won't see the ground reflection, because now your RF is sitting at a null. But when you have it lower or higher, your ground effect is going to have some effect on your SWR, and then you kind of tune it to kind of counteract it and take it out. So that's pretty much the simplistic form of it. There's other factors, but for the most part, you're seeing the ground effect of the height of the antenna versus frequency and everything. So
Don, is SWR the boogeyman? Should we be as worried as we are and obsessed about SWR?
I'm not an antenna theorist. I can spell math most of the time correctly. So I'm not a big antenna theory guy. This is more of a question for Steve. But in my experience, SWR is, I think, a measure of efficiency, and also lower SWR protects your gear, because that power going back in has to be dissipated somehow, and it's going to be dissipated in heat, and heat is the enemy of electronics. I think you got to worry more about the impedance match. If you have a little bit of SWR, but you've got a really, really tight impedance match on a tuned antenna, then the SWR will probably follow the impedance, although not always. But I think that's what you really need to look at more, is the impedance, rather than just strictly, do I have a flat SWR? Because
Sidecar?
they're related,
Yeah.
but yeah.
they're related. So back in the day when you're using tubed equipment, we had a tube final, like in your amplifiers or even the radio, or even these guys behind me, let's go this way, the Collins here, they were a little more forgiving with SWR. They could handle that, because that, as Don pointed out, that power that's coming back down into your transmitter is going to be dissipated in heat. And so these radios are a lot more forgiving versus this radio over here. And so one of the things that the modern radios have is that when it starts to see more power coming back, to protect itself, it will start reducing your output power. So instead of having 100 watts out, it will start to bring it down to 75 to 50 or even 40. It could even get to a point where it's just going to say, I'm done. I'm not going to transmit anymore. I'm just going to turn off the output power just to save the finals. It's a protection circuit. So today, yes, SWR is a little more critical, and it comes down to what your radio sees, not
Right.
And as Don pointed out, it's going to SWR, really you need to look at SWR at the feed point, and
Yes.
your standard dipole antenna feed point is 73 ohms, 72, 73 ohms. The cable we feed is 50, 52 ohms. So right off the bat, right at the start, you're going to have a 1.5 to 1 SWR just with your standard dipole. But then we counteract it. And there are ways to figure out what your true SWR is without having to be up at the antenna at height. And that goes by multiple half wave lengths of your coax, factoring in your velocity factor. So there's some math in there, and I don't want to blow Don's head up because we don't want to talk about math. He's starting to learn about interest, compounded daily, and all that other stuff. So
does he owe you money? What? That's a weird reference.
We don't
Do
wanna,
you owe him money?
Overload him with that.
Listen, studying for the real estate stuff, the license, the all the contract stuff and everything else, that's not difficult to me. But there are like 23 different math formulas that I need to know as far as interest, prorating taxes that are paid in advance or paid in arrears, and not the least is figuring out what my commission is going to be on the sale of, there's so much math that I'm actually studying right now that it makes my hair hurt. So, yeah.
So, yeah, to go back to the question, yes, SWR is a little more sensitive these days because of our radios. We have better understanding of it. I mean, back in the day, we just threw up antennas and it was like, well, does it work? And it's like, and when you really looked at it, it was like, good God, you got a 10 to 1 SWR rate. And it's like, well, I don't care. I'm still making the contact to the guy, across the, on the other side of the world. But we didn't factor in propagation at the time in the 50s when it was super great. And it didn't matter if you threw out a milliwatt, you still was, making the contact with Antarctica because the propagation was good.
And look at the difference between those tube type radios that you have and today's solid state stuff. The tube type radios generate heat. They have to be hot to work. Those tubes have to be hot to work. And a lot of heat. Hundreds of degrees. What's a little bit more? Exactly. They're already hot. So another 30, 40 degrees, 50 degrees isn't going to make that much difference. But you start putting another 40, 50 degrees into a transistor, a final transistor that's already probably 150 degrees on the outside. Now all of a sudden that thing's burning up because the physical size and just the makeup of how those things are made versus pieces of metal in a vacuum with a heating element in there. Big difference between the tube type radio and the solid state radio, and that I think is probably the biggest limiting factor of solid state stuff. And
we're having a better understanding of things. Right. Computer simulations, better technology, and measuring everything. So it's
Dr. Bob taught me that. Dr. Bob Heil. In the early days, you heard of him, and I've spaced on his call, K9 EID, right?
EID.
The dyslexia, Bob Heil, that's all you need to say. I asked him about this one time back in the early days, and he talked about that 10 to 1 in the old boat anchors and how that they were very forgiving. And he's basically like, you're not going to blow up your old boat anchor at 10 to 1 SWR. But the solid state rigs, and I had the Drake TR7, which he advised me on back then, and getting that, that was different. That it was like you need to be down between, 3 to 1 and down, 2 to 1 and down if you can. Yeah. Of course, 1 to 1 is going to be your perfect spot. But I was like, wow, man, this 10 to 1 life you used to live, because I wanted a Collins radio like that's behind Sidecar Steve back there, and he was like, you need to be really handy with that, because there was another guy locally that had a full line and it was a good price. And when I say a good price, I think it was like $1,500. Imagine buying a 7300 or the new Yaesu or Kenwood radio, and you're in that ballpark, full line like what's behind Steve. Knew the owner, and I was like, man, I could save up. He's not trying to. And Bob was like, you need to be really handy. Those are great radios, but they would break. and you
Yeah.
need to know how to fix them, or you're off the air for a long time and looking for someone. And I went toward a solid state, the TR7, which I still have. But that conversation came up of the differences, like we talked about today, and I thought 10-1.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, well,
I
the
had
other
a
thing
Swan
that
500
the-
CX for a while, and that was very fiddly. It was, it was a great radio, but you had to, adjust the plate and adjust this and adjust that and just everything else, and you couldn't just, punch a button to go from 20 to 40 and hit the auto tuner.
Right.
It was fiddly, and you got to learn how to read those meters and know what all that stuff means. I'd love to have another. I sold it because it was, I wasn't ready for that at the time, and I really hate that I sold it. I really would like to find another one of those.
All right.
So
Put out the call.
the other thing that these older radios had, they had what they call the Pi network, which was if you look at the Pi network in an old tube typed radio, it's exactly the same of what's in your tuners. It just, you had it built in. Every tube based radio had a Pi network in it.
Yep.
And so you had this wide range tuner that you were able to tune your whatever antenna you were using, or light bulbs that were was your dummy load, and you just went from there. So it's the first generation of solid state radios didn't have built-in tuners, and then you had to have your external tuner, where this radio had it built in, and then now the newer radios have a limited range tuner in it, which will only take about 3-1 because of it's due mainly to size and component levels and things like that. So they could get away with it, but then the radio will have to get bigger. So
And more expensive.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Hey guys, make sure that you put the nomination form in for the Young Ham of the Year. It is at arnewsline.org. I know you know somebody who you've been around and we're like, wow, that's a next level. That's what Don and that committee and Amateur Radio Newsline is looking for, rewarding those young hams that are really moving the ball forward in terms of this. And Don mentioned last week, just because your 7-year-old is an extra may not be what puts you over the top. It's not a race to get your extra. It's how are you innovating?
It's what you do with that license. Yeah.
And
So-
then look at what these kids are doing and how they're going. I mean, just right off the bat, let's look at Chris. We just talked about Chris. He's getting his pilot's license, which is not a easy feat to do. He's going to St. Louis University and coming that. You got Skyler, that was another Young Ham of the Year award. He's attending. I think he's probably going to be graduated or just about to graduate from the University of New Mexico. He's continued on. We got Marty Soloway, who's gone on and done some great things. And there's others, and I'm just naming 3, just off the.
Patrick Lysandru from several years ago is working at SpaceX.
There you go.
There it is.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
what we're talking about.
And then probably the youngest ham, Neil Rapp. Look at Neil, what he has done from being the youngest ham many, many years ago to being an educator and teaching our youth. And
chemistry teacher. Yeah.
Exactly. So the Young Ham of the Years, these kids are our future, like you said, is well taken care of. We got some great young people that are going to keep the hobby moving forward, and we just need to bring on more. And you know, kids like Elizabeth here, this KD9 LFZ, making YouTube videos, and just going out there having, enjoying themselves and having fun, and they're all around us. So get the nomination in, get it to Don and those guys, and that way. Because we need to keep this going. Because I'll tell you a little story here. Growing up in the LA area, I got to know Bill Pasternak a little bit, and I was at some ham fest or something, and Bill sought me out, and I was probably 17, 18 at the time, and this was in the mid to late 70s, mid 70s, and he was that he was interested in the youth. I mean, just happened to be there, and he came around and started talking to me long before, I knew of him as Westlink and everything, and working at KTTV and his normal job. But Bill was very passionate about the youth and the hobby, and that was before the Young Ham of the Year. And so this is something that has been dear and near to that man's heart.
Oh yeah, and the thing about having a ham license as a kid, I told my son, I said, this is something you can put on your resume, and something else that would to go along with that call sign on your resume that could actually throw a lot of weight is the fact that you are the recipient of the Young Ham of the Year award, or the Hiram Percy Maxim, or any of these others that celebrate youth and amateur radio. I told my son, I said, the guy who's doing the hiring could have 3 great candidates, and he could be to the point to where, you know what, I could put all 3 of these applications up on the wall, close my eyes, spin around 3 times, throw a dart, and be happy with all of them. But if the guy who's doing the hiring, let's say his dad was a ham, or he's a ham, or he knows of ham radio and knows what that's all about, and you're the one with the call sign and those other 2 aren't, guess who's got the leg up? The one with the call sign. So it could be a game changer. My son has his ham ticket now. He doesn't operate, but he's got it. He talks to me occasionally, at a ham fest on an HT. But he, the guy that he works for, he does IT help desk. He's been doing that for about a year now, right out of college, a 2-year college. And one of the guys that's way up high that he works with is a ham. And so my son, as a IT help desk guy, IT help desk guys normally don't get the opportunity that he did. His boss came to him and said, "Hey, I've got to go out to Corona, California, and look at the installation of a new IT center. I want you to come with me." Normally, IT help desk guys don't get those opportunities, but he did, and I don't know if it's because he has his ham ticket or not, or just that he's just a really qualified and well-liked employee and does his job really well. But having that ham ticket could mean the difference between getting a job or getting an opportunity and not. And certainly having that Young Ham of the Year on your resume as well certainly won't hurt.
Good deal. Good deal. Please do it. You all know somebody, or somebody knows somebody. Start talking about it and share that website, arnewsline.org, and let people know. I want to get these.
And Monday is the deadline. Monday midnight Eastern is the deadline. Yeah,
it's time.
2 days.
It's time to do it. My thanks to Don, AE5DW, and of course Sidecar Steve. We've kept you here too long now. We're getting into the sort of, it's not quite supper time, but you got to have a good lunch, and we're getting toward that time where people start to be irritable, and they'll be like, they do like the Paul Brown.
That you guys touched on earlier about it being Memorial Day weekend. By all means, remember what that means, and remember those who gave their life for this country so that we could all be free. Thankfully, my dad was a World War II veteran. He served in the Pacific Theater, and thankfully he came home. I should say my adopted dad, because I'm adopted. And just recently, within the last 3 or 4 years, I've met my birth family. And although he's not my biological dad, he is the husband of my birth mother. And he came back from the Marines in Vietnam. And I'm so thankful that Archie Wilbanks came back from World War II and was my dad until he passed away. And I'm really thankful that I have Ron as my bonus dad. And
nice.
Yeah. And so, if you know a veteran, Veterans Day is the day that we remember those that lived, but Memorial Day is those who gave the ultimate price, obviously. But if there's a veteran in your life, let them know that you're thinking about them as well. I think it's just always a good idea. And anytime I'm out and I see somebody with a Vietnam hat on, or a hat from some Navy ship, or any type of veterans hat on, I always walk up to them and thank them for their service, and do that, not just today or Veterans Day, but every day of the year. Let them know that they're appreciated, and that the sacrifices that they made are noticed and that are appreciated.
Cheers to all of those that did it. who went out there and did it, put their life on the line, and gave their life. We appreciate you and think about you this weekend as we're here to enjoy these freedoms. So thank you guys
As
for that.
this is a U.S. centric, but also for anybody in your country, your home country.
Right.
Thank your veterans for serving.
That's right.
Because they served you and the citizens of your country. Thanks to all the veterans and for your service, and especially to the ones that made the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
All right, brothers and sisters, take care of yourselves. Look out for each other. And by all means, join us tomorrow night. Hopefully, Don, you'll be around. You can check into the net. We'll be running tomorrow. We live stream it as well. So we'll be out here, 7 o'clock Central Time, making some contacts. Hopefully, the sun will be kind, and she will give us a little bit of propagation tomorrow. A little more than Don and I had last night on 80 and 20. But
Yeah, it's pretty feeble.
what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
She was messing with you.
She wins. She's the boss.
Yeah.
Enjoy your lunch and your day, and we'll catch up with you later. And by all means, if you can, please try and stay above the noise. 73, friends. Take care, y'all.
To join the 100 Watts in a Wire community, visit 100wattsinawire.com.